So when we moved into this house, we inherited an old trampoline that we got from my in-laws. It really hadn't been used for about 10 years and needed a new home. So we decided that this was a perfect opportunity for us to dig a tramp pit and put in a below ground tramp, especially because we didn't have really any grass and there was no sprinkler system put in the yard yet. So in this video, I'm gonna show you guys how I dug my trampoline pit, and most importantly, what I used as the retaining walls for the trampoline pit. That's the most important part, to make sure that the dirt doesn't come into it, and it cost me less than $100. But before we get going, make sure you hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell. That way you'll be notified of any of the new projects that I have coming down the line. Without further ado, here's the video. The first thing that I did was I flipped the frame of the tramp over on the ground so that I could mark exactly where I was going to dig this hole. I marked it with just a simple paint can and a block to use as a spacer. This gave me about another 6 inches outside of the hole. That way the hole was big enough and I could just drop the tramp in without having any issues. Now, as you can see, the paint didn't really stick very well because it was windy and I'm spray painting onto loose dirt. But if you're spray painting on your grass, I'm sure that the marks will stay a lot better. The next thing I did was prep the frame with the retaining wall. That way it was all set up by the time I got it all dug out. When it comes to retaining walls for underground trampolines, there are a ton of different people that use 2x4s and use metal roofing around the outside. That just seemed like it was a little bit of overkill and added too much weight to the frame. There's also kits out there that you can buy that are like thousands of dollars that are meant as retaining walls for an underground tramp. So the idea I kind of came up with is I'm using these panels. They're called corrugated foam polycarbonate roof panels. They're from Home Depot. What they're actually meant for is for the roofs of greenhouses. And the nice thing about polycarbonate is it holds up against harsh weathers. So like the extreme colds that we get here in Utah in the winter and the pretty hot weather that we get in the summer will be no match for these things. In fact, I can attest to that because this voiceover is actually recorded 2 years after I did this project. So I've been able to see that they last really, really well through the winter. And we've had zero issues with dirt coming in or them not being strong enough to keep the dirt out or ground sinking around. So yeah, these worked out really, really well. And all I used is 4 of them just to kind of go around the outside, overlapping on each leg that I could and screwing into each leg. I'll make sure that I link them in the description below. That way you guys can pick some up from Home Depot. And they cost me a total of about $100. Now, this was the fun part for me. I've never actually used a mini excavator before, so I got the opportunity to do it. If you've used one before, you could probably tell that I have very little experience doing this, but it was fun to kind of figure out how these things work and to dig my own tramp pit. Now, before you go ahead and start digging in your yard, make sure you call 811 to have them come out and tell you where your utility lines are. Obviously, I did that before, and I made sure that I wasn't going to start digging where I wasn't supposed to. Now, one thing that I mentioned before, we didn't really have any sod or grass here. The whole backyard, pretty much the grass had died. And the nice thing is we didn't have any sprinkler lines as well. And so it was really easy to dig this pit, but you might need to be a little bit careful with your yard if those things are something that you need to avoid. Now, of course, while I'm out here digging, my little pups have to come out and check on their job and see their new little playground that they've got here. We made sure we put them away and kept them safe while I had the heavy machinery going. But it's always fun to get a little visit from them. Then I got a little bit more direction from my dad as far as where I needed to dig out on the hole, and started up and started doing it again. With this, I just kind of started putting all the dirt into separate piles. And as you can tell, you'll be able to tell a little bit later too, our ground had a ton of tree roots in it. We had a few trees in the backyard that we took out because they were just completely dead. They kind of just left behind these massive tree roots. So if you have the ability to get a mini excavator, I would highly recommend it. This one only cost me about $250 for the day, which seemed like it was very worth it. If you have to dig it out by hand and by shovel, it's a matter of it taking months, not days. So if you can get a mini excavator, that is exactly what I would recommend doing. Now, after we dug out a little bit with our hands to kind of square up the hole and square up the sides, we wanted to see if the tramp frame would fit. And as you can tell, it was a tight squeeze. We weren't quite there. My job with the excavator really wasn't as good as I would have hoped. I should have dug it a little bit bigger. It's probably easier to just make it bigger and fill in the dirt around it than have it be too shallow and have to dig for quite a while like I did. But that was the scenario. So we pulled the frame back out, and it was getting late this day, and it actually started to rain. So we decided to call it a day, and that I would come back and dig it out in the next few days when I got the chance. So that's exactly what I did. I came and dug around the sides for the next couple days and finally got the tramp pit to be where it needed to be, that I could get the frame down in there and that the tramp sat down as low as it needed to be. And then I started to spread out all of the dirt and make it more of a bowl shape. Now, I spread out the dirt in the middle because it needed to create some support on the inside of the retaining wall. That way the dirt from the outside doesn't all come down and that the grass doesn't sink on the outside. After I did that, I laid a string line to make sure that the frame was level with the ground, as well as to make sure I had enough depth in the middle of the tramp that whoever is jumping on the trampoline isn't going to hit the ground. This needs to be roughly about 3 feet deep. As long as it's that deep in the middle, you should be okay. It doesn't need to be that deep on the sides. And then I sprayed everything down with water. All this does is help to compact it all and helps all the dirt to stay where it needs to be. Next, I tackled the outside of the retaining wall by filling in these gaps with some of the extra dirt that we had in these dirt piles. It's important to make sure that it is compacted and not moving. That way your grass doesn't sink on the outside. Now, as you are compacting the dirt around the outside, you might see that the retaining wall flexes a little bit on the inside. That's okay. Just make sure that it gets filled back in if it does flex towards the inside. But the retaining wall shouldn't break. It should be totally fine. Also, you may be able to see that our retaining wall isn't flush with the ground. That's because we're going to be coming to put sod around the top, which will create the retaining wall being flush with the sod. So if you already have grass, you might want to make sure that your retaining wall is flush with the grass, but we're putting in grass afterwards. After I sprayed it all down, I decided to get the tramp all put together off camera and let my kids have a little bit of fun. Are you bouncing, Bubba? Can you bounce? Can you jump? Jump, jump, jump. He thinks it's so funny. Where are you going? Oh, you love it. Now, this doesn't have much to do with the trampoline pit, but I thought I'd show kind of the transformation of our backyard. We had a company come and do some sprinklers for us, which was fantastic. They were wonderful, and they worked really, really hard and really, really well for us. So we're excited to have a sprinkler system in our yard. As you can see, our soil here in Utah County is really sandy. That's because we're kind of close to the banks of the Utah Lake, and so we have a lot of sand, and our yard has so many roots in it because of the previous owner and all of the dead trees. that were not taken care of. So those it's good that we got that all out of the way. Hopefully we don't see a whole lot of sinkholes later on down the road when all of those roots start to deteriorate and biodegrade. But we'll deal with that as it comes. But as you can see, the tramp pit worked out really, really well. They kind of put sprinklers around it to make sure that the grass around it stays really, really nice. And we're super excited about the new grass and the new tramp and our new backyard where our kids can run and have a good time and play. Everything has turned out great with this house. So we're excited for it, and we'll keep you updated on our new old home. Well, thanks for watching the video. Like I mentioned before, this trampoline was put in about 2 years ago, and we have had 0 issues with the ground sinking or the retaining wall not holding out the dirt. It really has turned out awesome, and we're excited to have this tramp for many years to come. Again, thanks for watching my videos, and like I always say, never stop creating.